Proponents of French immersion programs say they impart benefits that last a lifetime. But while demand in Ontario for the programs keeps growing, graduation rates suggest that a great many students simply aren't making it through. What's working and what's not? To consider that, we're joined by Caroline Alfonso. She's the education reporter for the Globe and Mail. Stuart Miller, Director of Education at the HALTON District School Board. John Lawrence, journalist who had 2 children in French immersion. And Mary Cruden, volunteer president of the Ontario branch of Canadian Parents for French. And we're delighted to welcome all of you here around our table. You've got both academic, journalistic, and personal experience with all of what we're going to be talking about tonight. Let's start with this map that tells a bit of a story about French enrollment increases in the country. Now, this is from 2009 to 2014, and one can see that French immersion and the desire by parents to get their kids into these programs is really booming almost everywhere in the country. I mean, Ontario, we're up 28% over that period. Saskatchewan, up 35% over that period. But basically, it's up everywhere except Quebec. Might be a different story there. I want to start, Caroline, you've got one in and one may be there someday.
We'll see.
Yeah. 18 months old, the second one, right?
20 months,
20
yes.
months
yes.
What motivates a parent to want to put their child in French immersion?
Well, Steve, one of the things to remember is that French immersion is one of the only alternative programs offered in the early years of school, so in kindergarten and grade 1. And so parents are looking for sort of, what extras they can give their children at that age. And French immersion is a great extra to give their children because it offers a program where kids are learning a second language. Bilingualism is key in this country. It helps with social and cognitive skills. And some parents actually want to give their kids a little bit of an edge there. They feel like this French immersion program is giving them something extra that the other kids may not have. I
don't want to sound corny here, but how much of it is you feel like you're being a better Canadian if you put them in French immersion?
Perhaps that is true, but I think there's more to it than just being a better Canadian. I think it's every parent today, whether it's through sports or academics or anything like that, want to give their kids something more. And this is a way to give them something more.
Gotcha. Mary, what was your motive?
My motive was to prepare my children for the future, to put an extra tool in their toolkit, and I think that's the motivation of most parents that get involved in French immersion.
John, yours?
We like the idea of having bilingual kids. I also was interested in the idea that they would be in a class with other students whose parents are really interested in education and are keeners in that respect.
Now, you are not only a guy who runs an education system, but you're a parent as well, and you did this as well.
Yeah, well, I wouldn't say I run the system, but we did, and I think for many of the reasons stated here. I also think it's important for kids, brain development and all that. The more languages they ultimately speak or are exposed to, I think it changes the way their brains work and increases their intellectual and academic potential. So I think there's lots of good reasons for kids to learn, not just French, obviously French this being Canada, but many other languages if they're able to.
Shelton, can we go to that wide shot again? Show of hands here. How many people here were French immersion students themselves back in the day? John, going to you next then. What did you think of the program when you were in it?
So I stayed in for 1 year in grade 8. It was the second year it was offered. The teacher was fantastically charismatic woman. She spoke to us in French all the time. We had a joke that we could get permission to do whatever we wanted as long as we asked in French. But I found the program to be confusing. I had a little bit of a health issue at the end of the year, and so I discontinued it. A lot of my friends went on through high school, and they graduated basically fluent in French.
Why did you only start in grade 8 and not earlier?
Well, it was only the second year that it was offered in Ontario, and so there was no kindergarten stream French immersion at that point.
Was that problematic for you, starting at age 13 as opposed to earlier?
Well, it's really like being thrown into a pool full of ice water. I mean, it's completely confusing.
Yeah. And what do your kids think about it? How old were your kids when they were in?
So they both went in kindergarten.
Right from the beginning?
Right from the beginning,
okay.
Yeah. One went all the way through to grade 12, and the other left after grade 10 and went into extended French, which is French immersion light.
And how many years ago would that have been that they left the public school system?
So my younger one just graduated in the spring, and my older one he's in fourth year university, and so he's been out for a while.
Okay, not too long though. How's their French today?
Their French is okay. It's not. I wouldn't describe them as being fully bilingual, but they're competently bilingual, and so we've traveled in French-speaking countries, and they can get by. And from my own experience in just 1 year, I remember a remarkable amount from just that 1 year. So I'm confident that they have good working knowledge of French.
And given given all of the things that we've talked about here so far, and the position of French in English Canada in the country today, any regrets by you that you didn't hang in there?
I have a lot of concerns about the way the program is delivered, and it has to do with a mismatch between the demand for the program and the number of teachers who are really capable of.
Okay, good segue, because you're going to take us right to where we need to go next. Caroline, these are your numbers here, as reported in the Globe and Mail last spring. Let's bring these up, Sheldon. Look at the student enrollment, and this is in Stewart's board. This is in Halton. Look at these schools and look at the enrollment increases in French versus English. It's all on the French side. All of these different schools have got really huge uptake on the French side, not so much on the English side. And Stuart, I want to know what happens when an English stream is left with so few students.
Well, and this is the great dilemma that we're facing. I think if we were to talk to our parents, our educators, we're all supporters of French immersion. But unfortunately, there's implications for the high demand of French immersion, and it's twofold. John has actually touched on one, the labor market.
You haven't got enough French teachers.
And it's not just French teachers, it's high-quality French teachers. We just don't want to put people in a classroom who can speak French. We want people that have good pedagogy and are good teachers, and they're not easy to get. And many of our principals struggle to get quality French teachers, and they've reported that several times. The other part of it is we do get very low numbers of kids in our remaining in the English program. And in our schools, we have several schools with less than 15 kids, some with 4 or 5 students. So, school is not just academics, it's social, it's emotional, and these kids are in a small class with 4, 5, 6, or they're in a split. So boards have to make decisions. Our board has to make a decision. Do we triple grade kids in the English program, grades 1, 2, 3, or 2, 3, 4?
You can't really do that, can you?
Well, you can do it, but is it good for kids? I would argue no.
No.
Or we have to look at possibly moving kids out of one school into another school and creating a single-track French immersion school, or and moving the students out from one of those schools into a single-track English schools. So these are the small kids and their parents, and now we're debating whether we move them out of the school, and they're in the core program. They're in the core program of Ontario. And the third one is it costs boards money, because if we don't triple grade or we don't move them, we have to add an extra staff member to teach those classes to meet our requirements under legislation around capacity in classes.
Right. That's your experience in Halton,
Yeah,
which for those who live sort of far away, it's between Hamilton and Toronto. You've taken a look at the situation across the country. How reflective is that of the national view?
I feel like many boards across the country, and especially in Ontario, are battling with how to sort of, to help French immersion continue to grow, but also contain and help the English program just not be decimated, basically. And boards have been quite innovative in how they do it. I mean, Halton is one board that has taken some measures to do it. You have a place like Ottawa, where they have decided that kindergarten, the 2 years, JK and SK, is a bilingual program. So 50% French, 50% English, and then parents get to make the choice in grade 1 about whether they want to put their kids in French immersion. Then you have Peel out in Mississauga and Brampton, which has decided that we are going to limit the number of kids in French immersion to 25% of the total grade 1 student population. And if it exceeds that, we're going to have a lottery, which has been really controversial because French immersion is supposed to be for everyone. It's funded by the province. It's supposed to be for everybody, and yet you have a lottery system. So boards have done various things to try to sort of mitigate the growth, I guess, in French immersion in some ways, but also to allow the English program to survive.
Mary, how do you see the system reacting to all of these challenges that have been referred to?
I think school boards are going through a period of great challenge right now. We've just gone through a full rollout of full-day kindergarten, which was very disruptive for the system. Great for parents, great for little kids, but really challenging for school boards to deal with. So we just kind of finished that project, and now the emphasis is on we have too many school spaces for the number of kids that are in the education system in Ontario. And at the same time, we have this other thing happening where French immersion is growing. So for the last 10 years, it's been about 5% a year in Ontario, which 5% growth, that's a good news story. And it should be manageable. But when you put it in, I think, with all of these other things, school board administrators are like, whoa, this is a lot to deal with. And you do end up with these situations at some of these schools in Halton. And I think, you know, when you get to the point where somebody's education is being compromised, then that is time for the school system to step in and make sure that those kids, leaving 5 kids in an English class is not a good thing. Every kid deserves a great education.
But even if the schools step in, if there aren't enough quality French teachers to deal with the demand, what do they do about that?
Well, the teacher quality issue and the teacher supply issue is pretty complex in Ontario. So the Ontario College of Teachers puts out an annual report, Transition to Teaching, and for the last several years, many years in fact, there's been a surplus of French qualified teachers in Ontario. So these are teachers generally, you know, the way it goes in Ontario, they've got a Bachelor of Education, they probably have another bachelor's degree, you know, a BA, BSc, whatever, and then they do additional qualifications in French. So when we're talking about, are these teachers certified? Yes, they are. Are they the quality that a school board is looking for, a particular principal is looking for? You know, that's up to the individual doing the hiring to decide. So it's hard to kind of get at what that means. But I think we're at a bit of a tipping point right now. What the Ontario College of Teachers has told us is with the change to 2-year Bachelor of Ed, and certainly the kind of, you know, broadly known idea, I think, among undergrads that, you know, teaching is kind of a full profession and really, really hard to get into, and maybe young people are being discouraged from even pursuing it. So, I mean, just to add one more thing, is what we want to do, what Canadian Parents for French is doing, is trying to bring together the different stakeholders, whether it's the teacher ed programs, our Francophone partners, the teacher organizations, and a couple of school boards, and really dig in a bit and find out what's with supply, recruitment, and retention, and what things can we know, because we don't have enough data. No, the OCT, Ontario College, doesn't give us a lot of specifics and a lot of you know, the backstory on what the numbers are saying.
And
Caroline,
I think
go ahead.
when the quality of teachers issue is raised, I think when school boards are going through a lot of changes with their programs, I think teachers are more hesitant to want to go to a board like that because it's going through constant changes. And there are many teachers that want to work in big cities. So when we hear about the lack of teachers in French immersion, teachers are not willing to travel as far perhaps for those jobs, and so that's why probably we're hearing this disconnect between, you know, we have this growth but we don't have enough teachers. It depends what your program is, whether your teacher wants to teach there, and also where you're located.
Steve, I would just say, like, another point about that is boards, our board, I can't speak for others, we're spending significant time and energy in trying to recruit French teachers. We send our recruiters to university fairs out east, to various places. Our principals spend significant time interviewing candidates. When we surveyed our principals, they were going through 80% of our principals reported that they had real difficulties in getting quality French teachers. 80%.
Boy.
And they would go through 3 teachers before they would get someone. Because we feel that if it's the students in French immersion are entitled to the same level of same standard of teaching as the kids in the English program, so we want the same level. I mean, qualified and quality may be 2 different things, or they could be related. They're obviously related, but they could vary.
Sure. Let me put the spotlight on the student now as opposed to the teacher. And John, again, I'll pick up on your experience here. I think the numbers show that while there is a tremendous uptake at the front end, not everybody obviously goes all the way through the program, and at the back end, you know, I guess there's a lot of concern that people are dropping out, as you did. What do you think's going on there?
Well, I mean, we encountered some really underqualified educators. And let me just say that that teachers do really important and very difficult work. And I don't want to sort of offer blanket criticisms. But what we saw was teachers with marginal qualifications sort of having to teach multiple subject matters in which they were not always well qualified. We saw a lot of French immersion teachers speaking English during the day, which they were definitely not supposed to do. And so eventually, you know, there were enough of these examples that, you know, my younger son was sort of disillusioned with it. And my older son, who stuck through it, you know, he had some teachers who had, you know, it was a very regrettable experience, and he missed out on certain educational experiences. Now, you know, at the end of the day, I mean, you know, he's in university, he's a well-educated young person.
He's okay.
So, and nobody has a perfect experience of education, but I think that there's a truth in advertising component to this debate, which is that the school boards have a duty to explain to parents that they have this much capacity to offer French immersion, and they should not be taking more students than they can provide service for.
Well, funny you mention that, because we have, this is from the CBC radio program Cross Country Checkup. It's a clip of a Scarborough teacher in the English system called into the program to share her thoughts on French immersion. Let's play that clip and then we'll come back and chat. Sheldon, if you would.
I think that many of the kids we see sometimes have dropped out of the French system, come back to the English system, and now they have neither basic skills, literacy skills in both English, neither English nor French, because they've, say, absorbed some of the sound letter systems from French and some of them from English, and they are not able to separate out the two, and they're back in the English system, and they're not basically literate in English either now, and they're in grade 3, say. And that's a real issue and a problem, to start to learn to read and learn your basic sound system again at that age.
Stuart, are you seeing that in Halton?
We see kids come from French immersion back in. We do see that, and that's one of the challenges we face. The system that we're currently in now, that will be changing in 2018, parents choose French immersion for their children for grade 1. And so they're choosing actually in kindergarten whether their child goes into grade 1. Sometimes needs aren't completely identified at that time. It's clearly a parental choice at that point. As the kids get older, student voice enters into it, and some of those kids come back. And there's the reason parents choose, I think, is a little more complex than just saying it's because of language. I think others choose for other reasons. There's a perception sometimes that it's a more rigorous program, which we would deny completely. I think our English programs is strong, but we do find that students that are in the French immersion program that drop out, some may lack those skills, but some may have had needs that were not identified. Sure. And we have difficulty, I think all boards, but us, we've had difficulty in providing the same levels of support in our French immersion programs that we do in our English programs.
No, I hear you, but Caroline, given what we now know about the importance of early childhood education, those kids who experience what the teacher just described in that cross-country checkup clip, they're a year or 2 or 3 behind everybody else then once they get going. That's really problematic, isn't it?
But there is evidence showing that kids in French immersion who struggle will continue to struggle in English. I mean, it's not that they're not struggling generally and they need help. And so the help needs to come in the French immersion program to help those kids succeed, because these are kids who would struggle regardless of what the language is. So we have to take that into consideration. We have to make resources and help available to kids in this French immersion program, and a lot of boards are starting to recognize that and do that.
Well, but the inference I'm drawing from that clip is that they are struggling more as a result of the language issue than perhaps suggested by your last answer.
Right, and yes, and Stuart just said that that continues. So I don't know what the solution is. Maybe Mary has some thoughts on that.
Well, first of all, the Ministry of Education has a great policy document on French called an FSL framework, and last year they brought out a companion document which is called Including Students with Special Needs in FSL. And the expectation from the ministry is that students, regardless of the FSL program, whether it's core, extended, or immersion, will receive the support that they need to do well, to achieve what they can achieve. And certainly one thing that we see is that there's a lot of fossilized thinking out there about who should learn this extra language and who shouldn't.
Fossilized?
I would say fossilized,
Meaning
yeah.
what?
Myths that have been hanging around for 50 years
Like what?
since French immersion started. That some children are suited to French immersion and some children are not.
It's not true?
It is not true. It is not supported by researchers. We have, throughout the entire French, we just celebrated 50 years of French immersion last spring in Canada. It's an amazing, well-researched and validated program. It's been dug into from the special ed perspective. Fred Genesee, professor from McGill, did a lot of the seminal research. Nancy Wise here in Toronto is continuing that work. And what it basically shows is if you identify a learning issue, you're going to have that learning issue whether you're in English or French, and it needs to be supported whether you're in
Caroline just
English
said.
or French.
Yeah.
And what we need to do is have a bit more commitment to that and not really allow these kind of quiet conversations that say, Johnny, and it does tend to be boys more than girls, Johnny's really not suited for this. Johnny doesn't sit still. Or, he's got an executive function disorder. There's a lot of back talk that happens in the hallways about what's suitable for that kid that is disconnected from what we know from research.
And that's what
Steve,
I've heard
can I
from
just
parents.
add, though?
Please.
It's somewhat related to the teacher shortage. I would absolutely agree that students that are in French immersion should have the same supports, the same, but we don't have, those supports often come through a CERT, Special Education Resource Teacher. In our board, we have very few special education resource teachers who speak French. So therefore, any special support that comes for a student that's in the French immersion program delivered by a CERT would be delivered in English. Parents see their child getting some extra support that may be in French immersion, but the support is in English, which of course is a little bit counterintuitive. And then the parents make a choice to put the child back into the English program. So it's not unrelated to the staff challenges we have as well. I mean, we have classroom teachers, but many of our educational assistants do not speak French and so on. So parents make choices saying, well, the support they're getting, that extra help they're getting is in English. Why do we keep pushing this in French, and we'll put the child back into the English program?
Can I make a point about parents? So when we started, we were told parents don't need to speak French. Now, as it happens, my wife and I both speak some French, but it's not at all clear to me how you could have a child succeed, especially in the elementary years, when the parents don't speak French. Not every parent is engaged in their child's education, but I mean, it does make a difference. And if you don't have the language, how can you do it?
Is that to say if the parents don't speak French, the child ought not to be in French immersion?
No, I'm not saying that, but I think that this is my truth in advertising point, which is that I think that it creates an extra barrier for those children who are put in, and then they have all this homework. They have things they don't understand that come up in the school day, and their parents are in a difficult position because they can't really support the child. I think it's a real issue. We saw kids who left the program for that reason.
I think if I could just jump in here, a French immersion teacher, a very highly qualified French immersion teacher, said to me once that she had a huge advantage over colleagues in the English stream because she knew that her students' parents could not do their homework. So homework is a conversation between the school and the child, the teacher and the child. And so if a kid brings home something, and what they're supposed to be bringing home is review, things they've covered in class, or maybe something they didn't quite get finished in the beginning grades. If the kid can't do the homework, then the teacher needs to do that because the teacher needs to step up the game in the classroom. And the feedback that you give as a parent that the homework didn't get done because of whatever is what she needs for the kid to succeed. But it's not to say that parents don't have a role to play. In the early grades, it's very important to continue to read your child in your home language, whether it's English or something else, to develop those literacy skills, to do the cooking together, to do the counting,
But would
and
you
all
acknowledge,
of that.
Mary, would you acknowledge, though, that if your child's in French immersion and you don't speak any French at home, that's problematic for the child, is it not?
I don't think so. I think most kids find that a point of pride. And certainly when they get another sibling coming along, oh my gosh, watch those two kids talk to each other because mom and dad are not talking French.
My 5-year-old he's 3 days into French immersion and he loves it. And you know, my husband can speak French, has some French background. I don't have much, but he thinks he can teach me French. And it's a point of pride for him that he thinks that he can come home and teach me new words and sing to me in French, and he totally enjoys it.
That's after 3 days?
Yeah. That's after 3 days. He thinks he's fluent after 3 days, but mind you.
And I would say, Steve, it's not necessarily an impediment. It might be, but it's not necessarily. But I think it is an advantage if the parents do speak French, because the schools themselves cannot develop bilingual students, bilingual people. There needs to be some development of language outside of the school. They have to speak French, maybe in the playground, but at home or on the weekends, much like the European kids are exposed to English, and so many of them can speak English. So I think it's an advantage for students that are in French immersion whose parents do speak French, and I think they have a bit of an advantage.
Plus, it's an advantage for children in the English stream whose parents speak
I would
English.
agree.
But I think you want to look at one of the things that we have a responsibility to do as parents, in a French immersion or for core French for that matter, is to ensure that our kids are exposed to authentic experiences in French, and that is the basis of the new curriculum that came out a couple of years ago. French isn't just something is not a classroom language. French is something that's in our community. One of the things the ministry's done, which is fantastic, and we're very happy to be helping them with that, is the development of a website called FrenchStreet.ca, which is to connect students, parents, teachers to French activities that are taking place in their own community and beyond. Because it's one thing to learn in the classroom, you've got to build the confidence in these kids to take it outside of the classroom.
Let me put this issue on the table here. Sheldon, I'm going to go to board 2 now. Board 2. This is Aaron Hutchins writing for Maclean's magazine, where he writes, French-English bilingualism rates may be on the decline in Canada, but when it comes to getting kids into French immersion programs, which have come to be seen by many as a free private school within the public school system, there is nothing, it seems, that a Canadian parent won't do. For every student who graduates from French immersion, there's at least one other who has been bumped out of the program and put into an English-only stream that many deem inferior. Well-meaning parents may feel that French immersion is the answer for every child. In reality, it has become an elitist, overly restrictive system geared to benefit a certain type of student. Okay, Mary, have at it.
FSL is for all. It's provincial policy in Ontario. That is not the program in and of itself is not elitist.
That's the policy, but this
are there parents who might be elitist who put their kids in French immersion? Sure. What are you going to do about that? Does that really matter? What matters is whether school boards and the Ministry of Education are responding and identifying any barriers that might exist to participation. So I could lay out a bunch of different barriers, but what we like to see is school boards who are very committed to equity and inclusion, and they look at their French immersion programs through that lens to make sure that the opportunity is accessible to all, that a kid can get a bus if they live far away, that the information is shared.
Sometimes they can't get a bus if it's close.
Well,
that's another story.
There is this mentality among parents that I've spoken with about the English stream being a place where kids are who have behavioral needs, who have learning challenges, and that's where they go. So yes, there is this mentality among parents that I've spoken with that are in my neighborhood that tell me that, the teacher encouraged their kid to go into the French immersion program because of what the English program looked like. There is this mentality of elitism in the French program. As much as we'd like to deny it and think French immersion is for all, as a parent, you're thinking, I want my kid to do slightly better. I want my kid to have a leg up, and I don't want my kid to fall behind in their academics. And if they're going to fall behind in their academics, as wrong as it is in their academics in the English stream, I don't want to put my kid there.
Stuart, would you acknowledge this elitist angle in the story?
Well, on this point, Mary and I have had our disagreements in the past, but I'm in agreement with Mary. We need equity, we need inclusiveness. Is there an elitist angle to it? Absolutely. There's a perception out there by some that it's more rigorous, it's more academic. It's value added. The students that graduate ultimately from grade 12, like we're talking elementary French immersion, but these kids go through the entire system, have an advantage. We've surveyed parents and in preschool and kindergarten parents, and they've told us that we've asked them the reasons why they're putting their children in French immersion, and they say they want a second language. It's a bilingual country for travel, value added. We don't hear from the parents.
No one's going to say we're elitists.
But we do know that there's that, we know that some people believe that the kids are stronger, they get better academic performances. What I would say to those parents in our system, our board, let's take a look at the kids that graduate out of grade 12 and where their destination is after there. And I would argue that the students that come out of French immersion do no better or no worse than the students that come out of our core English programs and go off to post-secondary or whatever it is they decide to do.
But the big difference being that they could go off to the University of Laval and study in French, and kids that have been in core French are not likely to have that opportunity. So it is a little bit limited.
Students in core French can go into French in university.
Absolutely.
They don't need French immersion, so they can go toward French to university. So it's, there's still that opportunity there.
Yeah, there are many, many different paths to bilingualism. It doesn't specifically have to be French immersion.
You can go to Jean-Pierre for the summer.
Exactly. I think we help a lot of our members of parliament to do that over the course of the summer.
And you think, Steve, how many of our students in our system in Ontario now who are bilingual, trilingual? French isn't the language. It's many other languages, Arabic, Hindi, whatever.
I mean, we see that at our annual public speaking contest. We always ask the kids, everybody here speaks English, all the kids and the parents put up their hand, everybody speaks French, it's usually just the kids. How many speak a third language? How many speak a fourth language? And it's amazing how many hands go up.
Amazing because a lot or a little?
A lot. There's tons and tons of kids that speak 2 different languages at home. They have 2 parents who speak 2 different languages.
If you go outside Ontario, if you go to Edmonton, they offer Mandarin. They don't offer, they offer French, but they're offering different languages, and kids are opting for it.
Interesting. We got a few minutes left to tackle this last graphic here. This is the numbers from the Ottawa Carleton District School Board. They released a report about French immersion, and it described who takes French immersion. These folks tend to be higher socioeconomic status, 10% more girls, actually. Underrepresented in the system are English language learners, despite research showing that learning French helps these students learn English, and special needs students. Stuart, let me go to you first on this. What do you think causes these discrepancies in over and underrepresentation of various groups of people?
Well, I think the English language learner, it's kind of a mixed bag. We've actually, started the transition. We're having more and more of our English language learners' kids go into French immersion. And I think part of that is because they already have one language and the parents are exposing them to 2 languages at the same time, English and French. But I think many English language learners don't go in, or their parents don't put them in, is because many of them are new to the country. And it's just the morass of trying to adapt to a new country, a new culture, and everything else. Do they want to expose their children to more than that? And our schools, do we have the skills and the qualified people to work with English language learners in our French immersion programs? It's tricky because as we've said before, we've said it several times, there is a labor shortage. We've seen for years that there's more girls than boys going into these programs.
Why do you think that is?
Well, I mean, girls are generally, I hate to sound, there's no way you can say this and look good on it, but girls generally seem to have better language skills than boys. And they mature at a greater rate.
And will sit still longer.
And sit still longer. Yeah. They have the game of school better than boys.
I think that's kind of the game of school more than specific abilities.
You're able to put them into these classrooms. The boys that are fidgeting and that, they're trying to learn a language and they're doing all sorts of stuff. They go, and we've already talked about special needs kids, the challenges we have as a board in supporting these kids. It's our plan, it's our hope, it's our absolute belief that we need to support all students who choose those programs, but sometimes there's a gap in our ability to do that.
Should special needs children be in French immersion programs also?
Absolutely. As I said, ministry policy documents said FSL classrooms should reflect the student population that's in your board. So if your board has an a lesser amount, and one of the things the ministry's done in the last couple of years is now provided better tools for school boards to actually drill down into this data and take a look. So as we all know, in education, data is a call to action. So the call to action here is particularly looking at the grade 1 to 3 students. What are your beliefs? What's supported by research and what isn't. They've done this fabulous ed talk by an awesome educator, Kara Bowles, which is available on EduGains for anybody to look at, that challenges principals to think about what their beliefs are about where students with special needs should be. There's absolutely no reason why a student with special needs can't learn French and reap all the benefits from it.
John, help us with this. If there are too many parents and too many kids who want into French immersion, but they can't get into French immersion, therefore those that are in French immersion, lucky enough to be there, lucky enough to win the lottery, and it has this patina of being an elitist program, what do we do about that?
Well, so imagine if you didn't have history teachers, would you offer history in high school? And I think that I agree that French immersion should be available to everybody. In practical terms, it's not something that the school boards are capable of recruiting to meet that goal. So, a lottery is a good solution. I think that the boards should be very clinical about their ability to deliver, how much capacity they have, and communicate that to parents. And if it's a random choice that reflects the complete makeup of the student body, so some special needs students in proportion will be admitted and so on, then you get past that question, that issue of the elitism, right? Because special programs tend to go to parents who can work the system, who know how to talk to a principal, who know how to sort of advocate for their child, who have the language to advocate for their child. And if you do it in a more sort of random way, then you probably get a little bit less of that result.
Or even worse, I don't know if you've heard in your travels about any parents who have tried to bribe other parents because the other kid got the spot in the lottery and this parent didn't.
I have not heard that.
You've not heard that?
Oh my goodness.
I'm just imagining that this can't be far away.
Well, the thing about the lottery system in the Peel board, I've heard that yes, there is the lottery system to get in grade 1, but by grade 2, anybody who wants to get into French immersion in their school will get into the French immersion. So there's a bit of a sort of a drop off that I think that happens in between then. So they do manage to get in. I'm not a big fan of the lottery system. I think the French immersion system should be French immersion should be open to every kid, and I agree that boards should make it a priority to accommodate special needs kids, because I want my son to be in a classroom with different types of learners, a healthy mix of learners, and I don't want it to be an elite program. I don't want, I think all parents are involved in some way in their kids' education, regardless of whether they're in the English stream or in the French stream, and I want a diverse class for my child.
So parents, if you want to steer your child to a good career, make sure they learn French, because there's great teaching jobs in French in the future, no doubt, right? Good of all of you to come into TVO tonight and help us out with this. Thanks so much, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Help TVO create a better world through the power of learning. Visit TVO.org and make a tax-deductible donation today.